Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Thursday, August the 11th, and welcome to our commentary. Well, day three after the raid, and we finally heard from the Attorney General. Unfortunately, we didn't hear anything worthwhile. What he did was, if you were watching it, I happened to be watching it a few minutes ago. He was reading off a teleprompter in front of him. You could just tell he was looking and reading. He read a very carefully written statement full of legalese and did not address any of the main issues. I guess from the statement that he read, we at least know that he was the one who approved the raid or the visit or whatever you want to call it to the president's or the former president's home. He said probable cause, which is why they got the warrant, but that's all he said. There were no specifics. So, do we know anything more after this statement? The answer is no. The answer is no. And I'm trying to be fair to the attorney general here because, it's a complicated topic and I know it's often complicated to talk about these things. So I'm trying to be fair. But I think it would have been a lot more productive, frankly, for him to have said nothing today or simply said, I will make a statement when I have something to say, but right now I don't. Because I don't think anybody's going to be happy with what he said today. And in fact, the problem, because they're not being specific about anything, I think the problem is that they're opening themselves up for more criticism. But I also think the other thing that happens is that you have all of these rumors going around about this and this and this and that. And he really didn't address any of those rumors, didn't really, answer any of those questions, for example, about the warrant and stuff like that is going around. So I'm glad he spoke. At least we know he's alive. At least we know he's on the job or going to work, but he really didn't say anything worthwhile. Now, this is probably going to change a lot over the next few days, but I don't think this presentation today, what we saw today, is going to do much of anything, frankly, to answer questions or to satisfy a very large percentage of the American people, myself included, who would like to know exactly why we had to take such drastic action if we were talking about documents. I mean, if we're talking about documents, is what you do is you negotiate with the Trump people, you negotiate. And if you get to a point where you don't feel that the Trump people are negotiating, then you issue a subpoena. And if the Trump people do not respect the subpoena, then you go to the courts, eventually the Supreme Court perhaps, and you get a resolution there. And then you go back to the president and you say, look, here's a subpoena, here's the Supreme Court opinion. You have to release or give us this information. That's what I think they should have done. In other words, I think that something happened in the Department of Justice. There was panic, some kind of panic in the Department of Justice that they had to do it right now and they had to do it this way. Now, we can speculate as to what that was. There's a report going around that one of the documents that they were told was in there was a document that connected the FBI to the Spygate scandal of 2016. If you remember, back in 2016, the FBI or people within the FBI, certain members of the FBI, were texting each other and sending each other information about spying on the Trump campaign. All of that, and then of course the Russia thing too. That was the other problem. So apparently, from something I heard or somebody's publishing this, that that document, somebody heard that document was in there, and they were going in there to retrieve the document. So that's that could be. But if that was the case, the attorney general did not address that today. What I saw was an attorney general under a lot of pressure, a man who obviously knows that something very bad happened and that it's all on him because the White House apparently is distancing itself from the attorney general. He's on his own. This man is on his own. And the director of the FBI is probably not much more supported either. So it's going to be a tough few days for Attorney General Garland, but apparently he made the decision. He's now going to have to live with the outcome of that decision. So we'll keep an eye on. This is not the end of the story. This story is going to be growing significantly over the next couple of days. Well, there was another Trump story today, and that's in New York, where the state of New York is suing President Trump or former President Trump over his business practices. You know, I don't know, but I think a lot of Americans are just getting tired of all these investigations of President Trump. I mean, whether you love or hate the guy, and I know some of you hate him, and I understand that, but whether you love or hate the guy, there is a limit to the investigations. There's a point where you have to say, okay, fine. If you got something, put it up. But if you don't have something, please move on. And let's talk about something else, especially the state of New York. The state of New York is losing people like crazy. They are having a difficult time economically. The city of New York is a mess. All kinds of problems in the city of New York, crime, and they have all kinds of problems with businesses not coming back after the pandemic. So I don't know. One would think that if I lived in New York and I saw the Attorney General of New York obsessed with Donald Trump, gee, I wish he would get that obsessed with the crime in the streets. I wish the Attorney General of New York would get this energetic about the crime devastating the city of New York. I don't know, but there comes a point in time where you simply have to stop investigating Trump and do something else. Either you got something or you don't. But stop all of these politically motivated, investigations, because they're not helping the country, and I don't think they're helping the people doing these investigations either. I'm sure you remember the story of the kid who cried wolf. After a while, people are saying, okay, what do you have now? It's the same thing. Every week there's an investigation of Trump. What do you have? Tell me what you have. But apparently they don't have anything. I don't think they do. I don't think they have anything. I think they're just playing politics, but it's starting to backfire, I think, on them. The jobless claims were up today. That's not a good sign. Jobless claims, that's the number of people who are filing for unemployment. It went up today, so that could be a sign that the economy is slowing down, despite the fact that we had a good jobs report or a decent jobs report last week. Now we have jobless claims going up this week. That's not good. More people are filing for unemployment, and that's not a good thing. Well, on this day in history, I got a quick for you today. We go back to 1973. One of the most popular movies of the 1970s was released on this day, and I'm talking about American Graffiti. Now, if you know anything about American Graffiti, and probably many of you saw the film just like I did, they show it quite a bit on television, on these retro channels and so on. But if you know anything about American Graffiti, it was a low budget film, meaning that it was not supposed to be, one of the mega films. On the contrary, it was a low budget film. Very few people on that film were the actors were well known, but the movie was a smashing success, and they were able to sell millions and millions of tickets, and it became a very popular movie. The characters in the movie, I think, were very charming too. I think that's what made the movie so popular. And one of the shows that came out of that movie was Happy Days. Happy Days, of course, a show that took place in the 1950s in Milwaukee. A family living in the 1950s in Milwaukee, the Cunningham family. I'm sure you remember that show. Well, Richie Cunningham of that show was the main character of American Graffiti. The girl who was his girlfriend later on became one of the two girls in Laverne and Shirley. Graffiti had an impact on television and in movies later on. It became a very popular movie, but it was a low budget movie. It was never supposed to be a big movie. So the investors, the people who put up the money to make that movie, that probably was the biggest investment of the 1970s. I mean, the return on that investment turned out to be absolutely amazing. I think there were a couple of reasons why the movie was so successful, looking back at it now. Number one, the country in 1973, even though Vietnam had ended and Watergate had not fully begun, the country was looking for some entertainment. in 1973. And that's what this movie gave us. It just gave us a lot of entertainment. And I think sometimes, like if you go back to the Great Depression, some of the greatest comedy came out in the 1930s. Because sometimes when there are problems, people want to go to the movies and laugh and have a good time. And that's what I think American Graffiti did. It was a very entertaining movie, something you could watch and have a good time watching. The other thing about American Graffiti was the music. Now, Saturday Night Fever was the other big movie of the 1970s, or one of them. The movie, the music on the Saturday Night movie music was original. It was all original music, much of it composed by the Bee Gees. The music on American Graffiti was not original. They went back to the 1950s and early 60s and just dug up a bunch of hit singles, and that was the soundtrack of the movie. But the soundtrack was fantastic. It was like a collection of some of the biggest hits of the late 50s and early 60s. So if you bought the soundtrack, you had a really good collection of oldies from that era. And that music in the background, I think, had a lot to do with making the movie so popular. So American Graffiti came out on this day. That would be 49 years ago, 1973, 49 years ago. American Graffiti was released. When they show it, I watch it. I don't go out of my way to rent it, or I don't go to my way to download it. But if it's on, I'll watch it for a few minutes because it's entertaining. It's an entertaining movie, to say the least. Thank you for listening. Have a great day, and we'll continue to watch the story about the raid of the former president's home and the reaction and the statements, because I think this is going to get very complicated for the Biden administration. I really do, and especially for the Attorney General. He did not come across today as a very confident man who was on top of his job. He didn't come across that way, honestly. He looked awfully weak, and he looked like a man under a lot of stress, and he probably is. Thank you for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later.